Time blocking is a very simple practice. It's like the dumbest thing you can possibly think about to increase your productivity and make it a healthy habit of productivity. And yet it's one of the most misunderstood or most debated technique. And it's interesting. Um, at first, I did not believe in time blocking many years ago. And then over time, I started to really warm up to the idea, actually noticed that it was very good for me, for my mental health, for many things, for my productivity, of course. So how do you do time blocking? Is it just, pre-identifying what is going to happen during the day and saying, okay, this block is this block is this block is this block. That's the basic definition. And I think if you do it like this, it's a good start. It's a great start. But if you don't do it yet, uh, no matter what, if you do it or do it yet, I'd like to talk to you about maybe a slightly different way to think about time blocking. I'd like to try in this video to maybe reframe your mindset around your priorities. And so what I see with many expert business owners of experts firm is that because client work is so essential to their revenue, of course, that's how we make money. Then, it's through spending time with people, through coaching sessions or consulting hours, or working offline on client projects. And yet, we track our time most of the time, most cases. What I see is that it's very common to see the schedule of an expert that has mapped out all of their client meetings first. That's the most important thing, because we have that mindset that if we don't do that, if we deny a client because we're not available, we might lose the opportunity. So we schedule, we set our priorities from a place of fear. We are fearful that we're going to lose business because we're not available enough. And that was me many years ago. I made sure that my calendar is clear, that I'm as available as possible. And I shared my calendar with my clients so that they can see that I'm available to them. But the problem with this is that we don't prioritize enough the activities and the time we should be spending building solid foundations for our business through activities like publication, like creating a framework, like documenting our knowledge, like looking for better clients or researching new techniques and improving our craft. And if we don't preserve that time, if we don't set that time as a number one priority, well, that's really how we lose opportunities. It's an interesting debate here, and maybe you'll say, well, I disagree. It should be all about the client. Client is king, as we say in business, right? The client has all rights. But in the domain of expertise, I would disagree with this. I think that for the benefit of our clients should have maybe less rights than we think. And one of the rights that they should really not have a lot of is is the influence on our schedule. Yes, of course, we want to be flexible. We want to be fair. We want to make exceptions when, the context justifies it, because life happens and us and clients get sick. We have emergencies, families emergencies, or other types of emergencies, and we have to understand each other. So I'm not here trying to tell you to build a very rigid habit of scheduling or looking at your productivity with this really rigid and super disciplined and firm and bolted in steel or set in stone schedule. No, that's not my point here. My point here is to create a healthy productivity system that enables you to balance out, to have the structure necessary to still be flexible, just like the body has bone to keep things straight, but is still flexible to move around and dodge projectiles that would come your way like a ball or anything. The same kind of metaphor works for your schedule here. So here is how to think about time blocking. I'd like you to think about, so take an activity like doing outreach. Some people say networking or doing targeted client, contacting clients and target clients and doing cold calls and so on. I call it authentic outreach because, and look at my videos on this topic and my course, because basically my approach to this is to say, well, you are here, you're standing still, and you're sending a signal and a message to people, and you're reaching out to them, and based on their feedback, you can establish a connection or not. But you're not running around crazy in fear and like trying to push for sales and things like that. So back to time blocking here. So let's say you want to do outreach, right? And I recommend a minimum of, 2 hours of outreach a week, and that can be through different practices, different methods, different tactics, I would say. Could be contacting people that you don't know yet, or contacting people who have shown interest in your work, or maybe scheduling and planning for a webinar where you'll meet, new faces and so on. There's a whole bunch of methods here, but let's say you want to invest 2 hours of your time. Are these 2 hours going to float based on whatever your client's availability is? Well, no, the answer is no. What I like you to experiment with is to take those 2 hours and position them in moments of the week when you know that they're going to be the least subject to change, right? I want you to experiment with times when also your energy is at its best for this type of activity. So for instance, for me, I'll tell you that my outreach time, my best outreach time is actually right now between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific time. And I considered sometime running, recording some of those videos as one of my outreach activity. I'm reaching out to potential clients by emitting this message, this signal, so that people know that I exist, and maybe we can run into each other with the support of a media like this one. So 5 to 6 p.m. is my ideal time to do outreach. That's when I really have this mindset of authentic care for my clients, and I position these on my schedule, and then I swear to myself that I'm going to treat this time as one of my most important time for one of my most important clients ever. So I was having a conversation recently with a client who told me, well, if you do that, what if a client wants me to work at the same time for a project that they could pay me maybe $1,000 an hour? Like, it's a lot of money. $1,000 an hour. That's, for a lot of consultants, it's still a lot of money. And my answer was, well, maybe for this client, you're going to charge $1,000 an hour. But what if instead of having a work session with this client, you would actually focus on reaching out to clients you don't know yet? Maybe that 1 hour is worth a lot more than $1,000. Maybe it's worth $1 million, because during that hour you identify a client that has $1 million worth of budget that they want to spend with you. So doing time blocking works if you have the proper mindset, if you clearly identify your priorities. How do you figure out when to best time block and really protect that time? Is through experimentation. By now you probably know that I'm a big fan of the agile approach to creating businesses, and that's in here too, in healthy productivity, it shows up. Trial and error. Very quickly, the faster you schedule that time block for authentic outreach, say, or something else, accounting or whatever the case might be, the sooner you know how strong you're going to be at protecting that time and holding on to that pattern. Over time, if you spend 2 hours of outreach a week, or 3 or 4, but the base minimum, I'm going to set it to about 2 hours. Think about it. You spend 2 hours a week. That's 100 hours a year. Because basically, you know, I'm rounding up to make them to do the math here. 50 weeks a year. You spend 2 hours a week times 50. That's 100 hours reaching out to potential clients. That's the kind of output that I would love to see you commit to. I cannot guarantee the outcome. As I've mentioned in one of my previous videos, outcomes and outputs are two different things. Outcomes you can't control fully, outputs you can. And today, you have the possibility, you have the opportunity to commit to a certain level of outputs that are going to increase the likelihood, the chances that you will get to your outcomes. So commit to engaging at the same time for the same amount of energy, same amount of intensity, same amount of time to something that really matters to you and your business. And over time, you're going to see the compounding effect of that discipline. It's going to just create so much positive impact on what you do. You can replicate this same system. You can start slow. And I would say if you have never worked like this, you have never scheduled your work like this, I would encourage you to start and do just do it very, very gently, baby steps. What I want you to experience is the feeling of success, the feeling of focus, of dedication, of healthy work, because all of a sudden it becomes easy. You know exactly what you're going to do at what time, for how long. So it becomes easy. I want you to experience that feeling of simplicity, just little by little. Maybe block this week. Right now, as you see this video, go to your schedule right now and block 2 chunks of times, right? Do it now. Set it to be on a recurring basis, maybe once a week. And then start experimenting with that idea. See how good you are at protecting those blocks of time, no matter what, professional or personal reasons. You're there. It's like you're with yourself and you're the client. If a client paid you $1,000 to do outreach, would you be late? Would you flake? Would you reschedule on them at the last minute? Probably not. You would probably be right there because you are a professional. You are a conscious expert. You want to be dependable. You're committed to the success of your clients. So think about it now. If you are your number one client, and replicate that mindset for yourself, create it for yourself. So start small. And if you see success there, well, guess what? Add 2 more blocks about maybe a different topics, right? Recently, I switched my week and I noticed that I looked at the pattern and I noticed a place in my schedule where, you know, I tend to be at my best to reflect on the content of my courses. And I went ahead and scheduled a block of 2 hours every single week when I started engaging since January in creating that content because I'm at my best. And I already had requests from people who tell me, hey, I want to meet on that day. So I think it's on Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And I say, no, I'm so sorry, but I'm already booked. I already have a meeting. Is there another way, another time we could meet? Even if they claim to have a work for me or with a big budget and they come from a fancy company, and there is nothing more important than protecting the time and the value that I will create for the future, right? It's interesting because it's actually more certain, it's actually less risky to think like this versus saying yes to a potential client who might potentially be interested, even if they've demonstrated, even if you had already calls with them and they've told you they've got this work and they've got this project and so on, or they want to join your group program, or I can't control the outcome there. I don't know exactly the outcome of that conversation until maybe even after the work has started, right? At least when the contract is signed. But what I can control, however, is the certainty that if I spend those 2 hours on creating content, valuable content that I know will be helpful for people who will join my courses, that I know will create value, and that I know I will be rewarded personally, emotionally, in terms of relationship, but also very importantly, financially. And that is certain. That is critical. That is certain. Run the same mindset. Do the experiment with accounting, for instance. So many professionals delay the time when they will do their accounting. They don't look at the numbers. Do you know your numbers by heart? I have a time block every Thursday and Friday to review my numbers, look at where we are, and I know my numbers by heart. I can tell you, very precisely how much I make, how much my cost, how much I invest, how much I save, I pay my taxes and so on. I know the structure of all it because over time, years after years after years after years after years, I barely missed any of those meetings. I think I would guess my attendance rate to the meetings with myself is in the 80 to 90%. So what do you do if you have an emergency or a client all of a sudden really, really needs your, like if a client or I really wanted to be on this podcast and this podcast host can only meet with me, only interview me Wednesday at 9 a.m. And that's when I create my content. Well, maybe that's when it's time to use your flexible, your super flex mindset, your flexible brain, your elastic man brain to say, sure, well, I can make this work. I'll make an exception. It's fine. I'll reduce my content creation time by 1 hour, and I'll probably find another hour somewhere else. But at least I know that I had this conversation and that it's an intentional conversation, not just based on the fact that if I don't have this opportunity, I'm going to be lost. It's not from a place of fear. It's from a place of conscious decision making because I do have a structure. I don't know of any single successful organization that does not apply this kind of principle, right? In my family, I come from a background of creators, doctors, entrepreneurs, and I grew up with them, and I could probably mention and trace back, exactly what time of the day each person was doing what. I had an uncle who was running a chocolate factory, chocolate shop, and he was every day showing up in his we call it a laboratoire in French, laboratory in his kitchen, creating chocolate and pastries, and he was showing up every morning at 3:30 a.m. Right, that was his cadence. He was working until about 3 p.m. and then he would go home. And was there a client that he had to talk to? No, he was here because he was dedicated to creating the the goods to place in the front of the store. And my aunt who was running that chocolate shop was actually taking care of the front office and he was in the back office, but he would show up no matter what. So when you are an expert, you are a creator, you create intellectual property. And that can only happen if you have the discipline to show up when you decide when it is best for you to create that intellectual property. So figure out when is the best energetic time for you to do it, the best cadence, how much time you need, how many tools you need. Figure this out and then stick to it. That's how you do time blocking the right way, in my experience and in my opinion. So I hope this helps. And again, my call to action is go to your calendar now and schedule those 2 time blocks that you will commit, that you will swear to never, ever, ever touch unless there is a high degree of emergency. One last tip about this. If you feel like it's not working well, even in the first months, you see yourself like moving it, and just maybe find another spots for those time blocks, maybe for one of them, and see what happens if you move it, be it one day or before, after, different hours. Try the morning, try the evening, try the weekend, Try whenever you feel like it's going to work. Experiment with that until you find that stability. As always, I welcome your encouragements, your comments. I know that a handful of you are watching me, and I think I see this through YouTube data. I just want to say thank you for this. I welcome your attention. I'm thankful for your attention. And as always, I would love to hear your thoughts, your comments, your questions, and I'll take your requests if you have any. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.